Hi, I'm Dan.
And I'm Matt. Today we're going to show you how to build the Aries cable attachment. Today we're going to build a PR5000 6-post 93-inch attachment, but this video can be used for any configuration.
Today Matt's going to be walking us through the instruction manual. I've built a few of these, but Matt hasn't built any. He's going to be asking some questions along the way, and it might be some of the same questions you guys have at home. So for this build, we recommend having 2 people. It always helps to have an extra set of hands. This build's probably going to take us several hours, so let's get started.
Your Aries is going to arrive in 2 crates and 2 individual packages, one for the rods and one for the cables. We've gone ahead and unboxed and unpackaged everything, laid it all out, and made sure it was all here. We're going to go ahead and jump into it. So step 1A is to loosen all the bolts of your rack. We've already done that, so right now all these bolts are loose. Step 1B, remove the top bolt from each front upright and set aside for step 2. So we'll do that right now. All right, so step 2, we're going to take our back base piece, which is this part right here, with the open side in the front. We're going to move it to the back and attach it to the 4 rear posts. We're going to use the 2 bolts we removed, plus 6 more additional bolts to make the attachments. And we'll do that right now. So we're going to go ahead and attach this piece, and just an FYI, we're just going to hand tighten. We're not fully tightening any hardware until the assembly instructions tell us to.
I'm rolling, yeah. So you want to
So for these bolts, we're going to want to go washer first, get the bolt through, and then we're going to go washer, the split lock washer, and then the nut.
All right, moving on to step 3, we're going to take our top back brace and we're going to attach it to the back 2 uprights. And we're going to use another pack of the 4 bolts to do so.
Boom.
All right. Okay, so we're moving on to step 4A. It is for the 250-pound configuration. If you're going to use the 300-pound configuration, you'd move right on to 4B. All right, so we're going to be putting together the guide rods, the head plates, and the weight stacks. So as you can see, we got 2 guide rods for the right side, 2 guide rods for the left side. We got our head plates, 1 for each side. We got our spacers, 2 for each side. And we got our rubber donuts, 4 for each side.
And just so you know, if you do get the 300-pound stack, you won't be needing these spacers. All right, for this step, we're just going to focus on one side for now. So we're going to start on the right side here. We're going to grab our guide rods, bring them to the 2 holes back here. And then we're going to grab our 2 spacers with the flange on the top side. Put 1 on each guide rod. And then our 4 rubber donuts, we're going to put 2 on each guide rod. Now that we got that done, we can go ahead and start putting on our weight stack. Weight plates. So if your plates are a little sticky going on, a little helpful tip, you can get some silicone spray. Just dab a little bit on the guide rods here, and that's going to make your plates slide a lot smoother. All right, so now that we have 24 weight plates on there, we can go ahead and put on the head plate. You'll notice there's 2 holes here. This is the hole that we put our little weight selector pin in. We're just gonna face that towards the back of the machine.
Okay, so now we're going to repeat that same step, only on the left side. So we got our guide rods, our head plate, our rubber donuts, and our spacers, and we got our weight plates in the back. And we'll get started. All right, so we're moving on to step 5 now. We got our rear upper pulley housing system. We got our M16 hardware pack. We'll use all of that on this step. And then we got a pair of the M24 bolts, washers, and nuts that will be used as well.
All right, so we'll start with the right side first. Orientation on this guy, you'll notice there's a couple gold inserts here. We want those facing down, and we want this top pulley facing to the outside of the rack. Bring this guy right up here. And for now, you can just leave the guide rods kind of off to the side. We're not gonna do anything with them right now. Here I'm using our M16 hardware. We're gonna use one larger bolt and we're gonna put it on the outside pulley.
Still just hand tightening as well.
That's correct. Now we can go ahead and do the same thing to the left side.
Okay, so moving into step 6 now. We got our collar, which is gonna be this piece right here. 2 for the left side, 2 for the right side. We got our dampers, which are these little rubbery pieces. 2 for the right side, 2 for the left side. And we got our retainer, so 1 for the left side and 1 for the right side. And then as far as hardware, we got our pack right here. It's telling us we're gonna use 4 of the M10 by 40, so that's gonna be these 4 silver bolts right here. 4 of 10-078, which is the M10 silver washer, which will be these right here. And we're gonna use the 4mm Allen wrench, which will be this piece right here.
All right, so we're gonna focus on the right side again first. So first you're gonna put on your collar, 1 on both sides, both guide rods. Then we're gonna put on our damper with the flange on the bottom side, facing down. Those might be kind of sticky sliding on the guide rods.
Should these go all the way to the bottom, or does it matter?
They don't need to go all the way up to the bottom. We're gonna move them all the way up to the top here in just a minute.
So don't need to go to the bottom?
No.
Okay.
And then we're gonna put the retainer up top. And then using 2 of our bolts, we are going to connect it to the upper pulley housing. You can just hand tighten it for now. And we're gonna move our little rubber guy up in here and it'll seat right in there nice and tight. Then we'll bring our collars all the way up to the top and then using our 4mm Allen, we'll tighten those up flush to the top. So for these, you don't need to tighten them a whole bunch. You just want to tighten them enough just so they don't fall back down.
Okay, so moving on to step 7 now, we're going to attach our front upper pulley housing system. Hardware-wise, we're going to use 2 M24 bolts, washers, split lock washers and nuts. And then out of this same hardware pack that we just used, we're going to take 2 of the M24 nuts, 2 of the M24 split lock washers, and 2 of the M24 washers.
So you'll notice you have 2 welded bolts here. We're going to put those right in the center and connect it to this rear upper pulley housing. And then using the 2 nuts, washers, those guys on. And then using the 2 other bolts, gonna go up top, slide them down from the top, and then put on our washers and nuts. And that'll do it.
Okay, so rolling into step 8 now, there's part A and part B. The parts we're gonna use, we got our right and left side. This will be our top rear corner pulleys. We're gonna have 2 dampers for each side, and then we're gonna use a full hardware pack. So 2 bolts on the right side and 2 bolts on the left side.
All right, so focusing on the right side again, we're gonna have our orientation going this way, so this back pulley is facing in towards the rack. We're gonna come around here to the side, and we're gonna put this guy on the furthest back hole, using our bolts here. And then with our little dampers here, you'll kind of notice there's a flat side where it kind of flanges out. That's going to be facing the bottom. We're going to come right up here in these two holes, and you just kind of got to pinch them to get them in that hole so it fits in the groove there, and you're all set.
Okay, so moving into step 9 now. Just like the previous step, we got a part A and part B. We're going to do them both at the same time. So we got our rear lower pulley systems now. We got our right side and our left side. We're going to use a full M24 hardware pack, 2 for the right side, 2 for the left. And again, we got 2 dampers for the left side and 2 for the right.
All right, so focusing on the right side, orientation, we want our horizontal pulley here. As you can see, we want it facing on the front and on the outside of the rack. So we'll come back here to our furthest back hole again. Get it right under there on the cross member. Get our bolts through. Our washers and nut. And then again with our dampers, we're going to go on these back 2 holes here. Flange facing up this time, if you can see that. You're going to want to just squeeze that into the hole there. And these dampers are really just here to protect the cable so it doesn't fray by touching the bare metal.
All right, so moving on to step 10A now. All we're doing in this step is going to remove the 2 front uprights. And we're going to hang on to the upper bolts, but these bottom 4, the 2 on each side, you can set those aside and they won't be used again. One thing to note here, since we have the regular pull-up bar, it's attached to our front upright, so we're going to need to remove the pull-up bar. If you have a multi-grip pull-up bar that's attached to the cross members, you won't need to remove that. Okay, moving on to step 10B and 10C now. So we got our uprights removed from the rack and laid down on the side. This is the hardware that we removed from the top that we're going to save. We're going to use in this part. We got our right trolley and our left trolley. Dan will talk about orientation when we put those on. We got our upper brackets. They're the same, but one will be used for the right, one will be used for the left. And we'll use 2 M24 washers, 2 M24 split lock washers, and 2 M24 nuts to attach those to the upright. And then we got our bottom brackets, a right and a left. And again, Dan will talk about orientation, and we'll use a whole hardware pack to attach those 2 pieces. We'll start with the right side.
All right, first step here, we're going to grab our trolley. Orientation on this guy, so doing the right side here, we're going to want the handle facing outward, and then we're going to want our pulleys facing towards us when it's on the upright. So this guy comes with a couple little plastic liners in here. It's a little finicky to get on, but if you just kind of hold them with your hands here, obviously helps if you have somebody holding the uprights. Then you can just engage it wherever on the upright, and we'll stand it up in place. Come over here, grab our upper pulley, along with 1 nut, washer and lock washer, and another bolt. That guy through. Alrighty, I'll come down here to the bottom. And for this guy, we're going to want the pulley on the outside of the rack. So here we are. And this is going to go right through the upright and the cross member. Awesome, now we'll go ahead and do the same thing for the left side.
Okay, now that we got our uprights attached with the brackets and our trolleys on, we're going to reattach our pull-up bar, and then we're going to tighten all rack bolts and bolts from preceding steps.
All right, now we're gonna start tightening. It's always a good rule of thumb to start tightening at the bottom of your rack and work up to the top. That way you just keep everything nice and square. This is gonna be our size 36 socket for most of the big bolts. So we can go ahead and start now. Alrighty, now that we got all of our size 36 bolts tight, we're gonna come up here to the back. And these ones back here are gonna be a size 24. And then these guys here holding on the guide rods are gonna be a size 17. So, after you get these guys tight, you might need to readjust your damper and collar here. So it's just gonna be that size 4 Allen key. We'll just go ahead and loosen that and just slide these dampers up a little bit higher.
Not normally, but these guys. Yeah, they must have been fun. But normally now.
Okay, so we're on step 11 now. We got our head plate pulley bracket right here. We got one for each side, but there's no difference between the two. We got our weight selector pins, one for each side. And then hardware-wise, we're gonna use our 4mm Allen key again. We're gonna use the big 10mm Allen key. We're gonna need these two hex drive bolts, the M12s, and then these two M12 washers as well.
So focusing on the right side again, we're gonna come here and we're gonna first take our weight selector pin. We'll just pop it at any hole there. It's magnetic, so it's nice, sticks. And we're gonna take our little ring, slide it over the top of that, and we're gonna come over here with our pulley bracket, put it over the top. We're gonna take our bolt with the washer, get it down in here, it's kind of tight, and then you can take your wrench. If you have a better wrench, you can always use it. And we're just gonna tighten that bolt down. We don't need to tighten this bolt all the way, we're just gonna snug it up to where it's even with the bracket down here, but still allows this to spin. Then we're gonna take our size 4 Allen wrench, and that's gonna be for these set screws down here. We're not gonna tighten them right now, but if your bracket didn't slide on, just make sure that they're backed out enough so that it will.
Okay, so step 12A now, we got our two upper cables. We're gonna use one for the right side, one for the left side. We're gonna remove the hardware at the end. So we're gonna remove the nut, the bolt, the washer, the U connector.
That you just twist sideways, pull it through that big hole there,
And the ball.
take the ball off.
So step 12B now, we got our upper pulleys that we just removed the hardware from. We've got a floating pulley system, one for each side, and we got a pulley wheel, one for each side. And then hardware-wise, we're gonna use the two M10 black bolts, the 4 M10 washers, they're black as well, and the two M10 black nuts, one set for right and one set for the left. And we're also gonna use a 17 wrench and a 17 socket. And we'll start with the right side.
So before we start cabling, we're gonna go through and loosen up every pulley bolt where the cable is gonna go. Got my size 17 wrench and socket here. So I loosened this one already. So I'm gonna run through and do all of these cables gonna run all the way around here and up. So I'm gonna loosen all those bolts. All right, so starting with the end that we just took all the components off, drop the rest of this cable out here. Come right here, we're gonna remove this top pulley. And just slide it up enough to where the cable is gonna be able to fit through. Probably just go ahead and reattach that guy now. Matt, if you could hold that cable there, come up through here, same deal with this guy. And you want to ensure that the cable is going between the pulley and this cable guard here. Each pulley has a cable guard. Just make sure the cable runs in between the two. And when you're reinserting the pulley, make sure you're putting the bolt back in the correct hole. Come to the back here. Going over the top, right to this pulley now. Hold that one for a sec. And then we're going to feed this cable down through the cross member to make sure it comes out this front hole here. You can kind of just reach your finger up there and pull it right down through. Take that pulley again. Again, making sure that cable runs between the cable guard and the pulley. Then we're going to grab our floating pulley. And there's really no right or wrong way to put this. Generally, I just have the 3 extra holes here. I'll just have those towards the bottom. We're going to run it through there. And that's just going to dangle. And then we're going to run the cable back up through the cross member over on top of this pulley here. Sorry, Matt. And again, maybe just stick your finger in the hole, guide the cable through. Then we'll put the pulley back through. Get the cable in the hole, or get the bolt in the hole. And we're going to come over the top up here to this pulley. You can see that on camera. Get that pulley in there. Now we're going to come down to the head plate here, and this is where we're going to insert the extra pulley. This continue to dangle here. We're going to put that extra pulley right here. Let me get the cable in there first, sorry. Alrighty, whoops. Using that black bolt that Matt mentioned before, washer and nut. Get that guy on. Now we're going to pull this guy up. So while we're on this step, I just want to mention one thing that makes it a whole lot easier. So we're going to move our head plate up just a little bit. We're going to take out our weight selector pin and just stick it in a different hole and let it rest like that. That's going to give us enough tension to make these next couple steps a little bit easier. So Matt, I'm going to have you stand on the other side, and I'm going to pass this to you so I don't got to move. But now we're going from this pulley, the head plate pulley, up to the pulley on this side. All right, now we're going to pass this over the top to Matt, over the top of the logo plate, up to the front pulley. All right, so I passed it over the logo plate here. Take this pulley out. Set it on top there. Again, going through in between the pulley and the cable guard. And back up through. Now we're going to reattach the end of our cable that we had taken off in the previous step. Matt's going to grab those pieces. We're going to put the ball end first. Then we're going to slide this guy in, so just put this ball right through the hole. All right, got that guy on. And then we're just going to set this bolt through here for now. We're later going to come back and stick a carabiner on this in a later step.
All right, so now that we got the upper cables done, we're going to move into step 13, and that's going to be our lower cables. So again, 2 cables, doesn't matter which side, but one for the right, one for the left. We're going to remove the bolt, remove the nut, the washer, the bolt, the U adapter, and the ball on each cable. Okay, for the lower cables, just like we did with the upper cables, we're going to come in and remove the washers and bolts so we can take the pulleys out, which will allow us to run the cables through.
All right, now that we got all the bolts loose on the pulleys, we can go ahead and start routing the cable. So we're going to start with our bolt end here. We're going to come to the back of the trolley. We're going to thread it in to this threaded part here. It doesn't need to thread in all the way. Probably just go about halfway. And then we'll move this lock nut up, get it into place. We'll come back and make sure that's nice and tight later on. And we will come take our other end of the cable here. We're going to go through this backside. Again, having to remove the pulleys. Make sure that cable goes in between the pulley and cable guard. And we will come back here to this pulley. Now this one has the nut welded on the back side, so there's not going to be a nut on this bottom side here. It's just threads. Then we're going to route our cable through behind here. I'm just going to do this step all in once. So I'm going to pull this cable out also, or this pulley out also. And again, that bolt just threads right in also. And then this cable is going to come up through this cross member. And this one's a little more difficult to get in. Kind of just got to stick your finger in one of the holes and guide it. I find it easier to stick my finger in this hole here, and you can kind of get behind that cable and push it up through. And we'll go ahead and reinsert those pulleys. Oops. And remember, I did that backwards. You have to put this pulley in first. There's multiple hole options down here. Just make sure you're getting it in the correct one. You'll feel those threads grab. And we can go back to this pulley here. Get it through. Screw that bolt in. Now we're going to bring our cable up and around this floating pulley. And I'm just going to pull the cable tight here. All right, so we're going to come down through this hole, and we're going to go around the back side of this pulley, but first I'm going to remove this pulley. It removes from the back side. So I'm going to take the cable, run it down through the hole, pull it out. I'm going to take my pulley here around the back side. I'm going to grab that cable and just wrap the cable around it. And then just pull it back into place there. Reinsert that bolt. Now we're going to come right to this pulley. And on this one, we need to ensure that the pulley goes, or the cable goes on top of the pulley. So we'll go ahead and remove the pulley. feed that cable through. And I'm actually just going to go ahead and remove both of these pulleys. Make it easier. That cable's going to feed right through here. Pull it tight. And when you're reinserting this pulley here, just make sure that cable goes back on top of the pulley. And then around the back side of this guy. Cable is just going to go underneath. And then we're going to grab our cable end and do the same thing we did up top. So we have our ball, our little U piece here, slide that guy in, then our bolt, washer, and nut. Now we can go ahead and release this head plate slack, and that's going to pull our cable nice and tight. And you'll notice that the cable's floating a little bit. There's a couple of different adjustment points on it, so you can either adjust the cable here depending on which hole you put the bolt in, or you can come over here to the cable bolt on the trolley, and that's going to drop your cable or your head plate into position to where that pin slides in nice and smooth. Boom. All right, now that we got step 13 done, we got our lower cable routed. I'm just going to come here to this head plate here and just show you guys a little tip. So we want to make sure that we get this cable in the right line. So we want to have this head plate pulley on the correct angle. So we don't want a lot of twist in the cable anywhere. We want it running nice and smooth. So just come off to the side here and you can kind of see that the cable runs nice and parallel. It's not twisted. And then we can go ahead and tighten down our size 4mm Allen bolts, or hex bolts.
Now that we got the lower cables done, we're going to move on to step 14. We got our back shroud right here. We got our front shroud with the Rep logo. And then hardware-wise, we're going to use our 4mm Allen key again. And we're going to use these, let's see, 8 M6 button head screws right here.
Yeah. Teamwork.
All right, so now that we got our back shroud attached, we're going to do the same thing with the front shroud. Okay, so now we're on to step 15. In this part, we got our foot plate, which will attach to the bottom right down there. And we got our 2 attachment hangers, which will go on the top cross member. They have an M24 bolts kind of pre-put into there. So we got a split washer, we got a flat washer, and a split lock washer, and a nut that will attach into both of those.
Alrighty, so no real right and lefts with this guy. We're gonna go right up here, right to the right of this bolt, find the hole on top, drop it down, get that nut on the back side, and then we'll do the same for the other side.
All right, now that we got those in, we're gonna go ahead and put our foot plate in. Come to the front right here, pull up on the pop pin, slide it in, lock it in place. Okay, now that we got everything put together, these are gonna be the final steps. We got our carabiners, which are gonna attach to the end of each cable, 2 up top, 2 in the bottom, and can also attach to our low row our lat pull down bar, and any other attachments you may have. We got our D handles, which we'll attach here. We got our clevis pins, which when you get the trolley where you want it on the upright, just slides into the hole just to lock it in place. We got our weight stickers that will apply to both sides of the stack. We got our add-on weights, which you can slide right onto the guide rod and down on top of the stack for some additional weight.
All right, now that we're all finished, we'll just want to run back through and ensure that all the hardware is tight. Not too much preventative maintenance on this. You will want to spray these guide rods down with some silicone every so often just to keep your machine running nice and smooth. Maybe run through and check the cables also, make sure they're staying on the pulleys.
Hope you found this video helpful. If you have any questions, reach out to our Colorado-based customer service team.